I've lived in Ireland for 7 years now, and I still remember the exact week I realized that both the postcard version and the horror story version were lying to me. Ireland is not the land of endless green fields, friendly pubs and effortless charm that Instagram and tourism boards sell you. And it is not the rainy, overpriced, housing crisis nightmare that certain forums and Reddit threads love to repeat either. It is something quieter, wetter and more complicated than both of those stories, and it took me years of living and working here as an engineer to actually see it clearly. If you want the real, unfiltered picture of life in this country, whether you already live here or you're thinking about moving, hit subscribe and turn on the bell. I only make these once a year. 7 years. Spread across Dublin and a couple of other places. In that time I've had chapters that felt exactly like the dream version of Ireland I carried in my head when I first arrived, and stretches that ground me down in ways nobody really prepares you for. Mostly housing. Mostly the peculiar Irish relationship with systems that are friendly on the surface and stubbornly slow underneath. My only goal here is to show you what daily life actually feels like right now for someone who works in engineering, pays Irish taxes, deals with Irish landlords, and has stopped pretending the weather is character building. Let's start with money, because that is still the first real question most people ask. Rent is the single biggest shock for almost everyone. Dublin is in a category of its own. A small one-bedroom apartment in a decent area can easily run from €1,900 to €2,600 a month in 2026, and that is before you even look at the bills. Outside the very center you might find something for €1,700 to €100 if you're lucky and patient. Step outside Dublin into Cork, Galway or Limerick and the same apartment can drop to €1,200, €1,600. Go further into smaller towns or the countryside and you can still find places for under $1,000, but then you are trading convenience and job opportunities for space. Utilities are their own quiet tax. Electricity and gas have both climbed hard in recent years. Heating an older Irish house through a long, damp winter is not cheap, and a surprising number of properties still have single glazing or poor insulation. You feel it every month. As an engineer the salary side looks better than the average, but it is not the golden ticket people sometimes imagine. Entry to mid-level engineering roles in tech or manufacturing often sit between €55,000 and €75,000. Senior or specialized roles in the bigger multinationals can push into the €90,000, €120,000 range, sometimes higher with stock or bonuses. On paper that sounds comfortable. In reality, once you take out tax, USC, PRSI, and the rent in Dublin, the number that lands in your account feels tighter than the gross figure suggests. Outside Dublin the same salary stretches further, which is why a growing number of people in my industry are quietly relocating to Cork or Galway and accepting the hybrid or fully remote setups that became more common after the pandemic. Health insurance is one of the more complicated parts of living here. The public system through the HSE is free or low cost at the point of use if you qualify, but waiting times for non-urgent care can be long, sometimes months for specialist appointments. Most people I know who can afford it carry private health insurance. It costs anywhere from €1,000 to €2,500 a year depending on age, level of cover and whether your employer contributes. Between the two systems you are generally well looked after once you are in the door, but getting into the door can test your patience. It is better than many countries, yet it is not the seamless experience some people expect from a wealthy European nation. Groceries sit in a strange middle ground. Basic staples, bread, milk, potatoes, Irish butter, seasonal vegetables from a farmer's market, are reasonable. Shopping at places like Lidl or Aldi keeps costs under control. But anything imported or convenience-oriented gets expensive fast. Eating out has become noticeably pricier. A simple lunch in a city center cafe now regularly lands between €15 and €22. A casual dinner for two with a couple of drinks can easily clear €80, €100. The quality of food, especially fresh produce and dairy, is often excellent. The price of enjoying it outside your own kitchen is another matter. Transport is one of the clearer divides between Dublin and everywhere else. In Dublin the bus network is extensive, the Lewis tram is useful, and the DART covers the coastal corridor. A monthly leap card for the city sits around €150, €170 depending on zones. Outside the capital public transport thins out quickly. Many people need a car, and once you factor in insurance, tax, fuel and the price of a second-hand vehicle, it becomes a significant monthly cost. Trains between major cities are comfortable when they run on time, but the network is not dense. If you live in a smaller town and work in a city, the commute can define a large part of your week. The systems around work are one of the quieter strengths. Annual leave starts at 20 days and many companies offer more. Parental leave has improved. Sick leave is generally reasonable once you have passed probation. As an engineer you also notice that the tech and pharmaceutical sectors still attract serious investment, which means interesting projects and relatively stable employment compared with some other European countries right now. The flip side is that the housing shortage affects everyone, including people on solid salaries. I have watched colleagues with good jobs spend 6 or 8 months searching for a place they could actually afford and that would accept them. Once you are inside an Irish rental, the texture is very particular. A lot of the housing stock, especially in cities, is older. High ceilings and period details in some Georgian or Victorian buildings sit alongside damp problems, single-glazed windows, and heating systems that struggle in January. New apartments are going up, but many of them are small and expensive. The rental process itself can feel exhausting. You need references, proof of income, often 3 times the rent, a deposit that is usually 1 month's rent plus the first month in advance, and sometimes a personal guarantor if you are new to the country. Competition for anything halfway decent in Dublin remains fierce. A lot of people end up accepting places that are smaller, further out, or more expensive than they wanted simply because something finally said yes. The trade-off between location and price is constant. Live in the city center or a popular suburb and you pay a premium for walkability and shorter commutes. Move further out and the rent drops, but your relationship with the city becomes a daily calculation of traffic, bus reliability, and time. Long-term residents develop a quiet flexibility around this. You stop expecting everything to be convenient and start building routines that absorb the friction. If you currently live in Ireland, drop one real thing in the comments that either makes you stay or makes you question it. The honest answers help more than any polished list. Safety here is genuinely one of the stronger points. Ireland is, day to day, a safe country. Violent crime exists but is not a constant backdrop for most people. Petty theft and the occasional opportunistic incident happen, especially in busier parts of Dublin late at night, but the overall feeling on the street is calmer than in many larger European cities. The daily mental load is less about personal danger and more about practical friction, the housing search, the cost of everything, the weather, and the occasional bureaucratic loop that takes longer than it should. The climate is its own character in the story. It is rarely extremely cold and rarely extremely hot. What it does consistently is rain, or threaten to rain, or create the soft gray light that makes everything look slightly cinematic and slightly melancholic at the same time. Winters mean short days and a damp cold that gets into your bones differently from a dry continental winter. Summers can be beautiful when the sun actually appears, and the long evenings in June and July are one of the real pleasures of living here. The first year the weather surprises most newcomers. By year 3 or 4 you stop fighting it and start owning proper rain gear and accepting that grand soft day is a legitimate weather category. Community and social life sit in a layered place. The Irish reputation for friendliness is real on the surface. People will chat to you in shops, on buses, in pubs. There is a warmth and humor that makes everyday interactions lighter than in many other countries. Getting deeper than that takes longer. The path into someone's actual inner circle can be slow, and a lot of social life still revolves around the pub or established friend groups that formed years earlier. The first year or two many expats stay clustered with other expats simply because it is easier. The loneliness that can come from that bubble is one of the less discussed parts of moving here. Breaking into local circles, through work, through a sports club, through consistently showing up at the same places, changes the texture of life significantly. But it asks more time and more emotional energy than a lot of people expect when they arrive thinking everyone will be instantly welcoming at a deeper level. Working as an engineer adds its own layer. The professional environment in the bigger companies is often international, which helps. You meet people from everywhere. At the same time, you notice how much of daily conversation still circles back to housing, to the cost of living, and to whether people are considering leaving. I have had colleagues who loved the work and the people and still decided to move because they could not see a realistic path to buying a home or even renting something stable long-term in the city where the jobs were concentrated. That tension is part of the current reality. So where does that leave things after 7 years? The quality of life here is high in several important ways. You are in an English-speaking country with a strong sense of humor, access to nature that is genuinely beautiful when the weather cooperates, a work culture that still values time off, and a general feeling of safety that is easy to take for granted until you visit somewhere that lacks it. The food has improved dramatically. The coffee is good. The conversations in pubs can still be excellent. But it comes wrapped in a housing market that feels broken for ordinary earners, a cost of living that keeps rising, a climate that demands resilience, and systems that are friendly until they are not. The charm is real. The frustration is also real. Neither cancels the other out. The honest version of living here sits in that middle space, and it looks different depending on your salary, whether you are in Dublin or outside it, how well you handle grey weather, and how much patience you have for a country that moves at its own uneven pace. If this gave you something honest to think about, give it a thumbs up. It genuinely helps this reach people who are trying to make a real decision instead of a romantic one. Subscribe with the bell on so you don't miss the next one. And drop a comment, tell me the real reason you stay, or the real reason you are still on the fence. Whether you live here already or you are still deciding, protect your peace and make the choice that actually fits your life. I'll see you in the next one.